All right, so like I said, today we are going to focus on starting our conversation over the 5 themes of geography. We'll get through at least one of them today and have an activity later on. But even before we get that, we need to understand that the 5 themes of geography are kind of the core of this class, but also the core of geography. The 5 themes can basically outline how the world takes shape and how the world looks in multiple different places across the entire Earth. Okay? But first, there's something that we need to discuss, basically. There's something that we need to know to have background information on before we move any further, basically, into this course, okay? What is this? It's a map. You are correct. What kind of map is it? It's a world map. What kind of map is this world map? It is flat. Somebody said square yesterday. That is also correct. It is square. It is flat. Is it physical? Is it political? Is it a road map? Well, that's okay. That's what we're going to talk about today. Can somebody point out the main components of this map? There's a legend right here. That's a good one. Anything else? So to move forward, right, if we're stuck at the world map, that means there are some things that we don't know, or there are some things that we need to work on before we can move forward, okay? One of those things being the main components of a map, okay? How do we read a map? What does a map look like? How can we tell and investigate how this map is trying to talk to us or to speak to us, right? It's a flat map. It's a map that does not speak. So we have to figure out a way in which to communicate with that map. And the main components of a map are going to be that avenue, okay? So maps are different all around. There can be a variety of different maps with a variety of different components in it, but the 5 main ones that we're going to see most often is obviously the title. The title is going to tell you what this map is about, what this map is referencing, what you should be finding out, or the information you should be gaining from this map, okay? A legend of some sort, just like Buski pointed out, a legend of some sort that tells you where things are at and what to look for. A grid is also a main component of a map. Those would be your latitude and longitude lines. Sometimes they're in them, sometimes they're not, but they're still just as important. A compass rose to show you north, south, east, and west, and a scale to show you mileage versus inches on that map. Okay. I got itch. All right, so if we're looking at a map, then now that we know the main components of them, which this one actually shows you exactly what it is anyway, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is what we should be looking for every time we look at a map. We've found the title. We've got the compass rose. Sorry, I missed one. Compass rose right here. This one obviously has a couple other things other than these main components that we're talking about, but the legend is here. The scale is here. The lines of latitude and longitude to make our grid are here. And we've got everything, or we've got most of our main components, or even more than our main components, okay? Because of these things, the title, the compass rose, the legend, the lines of latitude and longitude, et cetera, we can understand this map more. We know that this is an annual rainfall in Australia map. We can see where there's more rainfall and where there's less rainfall. We can see and we can tell how big Australia is because of our scale. We can see where we are located in the world, okay? All of those things, or those main components, are going to help us in achieving a better understanding of maps. Even if you have no clue what they're supposed to be about, we can at least look for those 5 things, or maybe even sometimes 4 things, and get a better understanding, okay? Now, there are main components of a map, but there are also different types of maps out there, okay? I asked you earlier about political, physical, or road maps. So those are the 3 types of maps that we can encounter basically throughout our journey in world geography. Physical, political, and road maps. We're going to talk about what each one is and what it looks like, and give an example of each. And next week, we're going to specifically get some work with road maps for sure. Or if I see you on Friday, we'll see. I don't think I'll see you on Friday. What's trainer's rank? Do I know? Not as high as ours. That's the only thing that matters. Did we end up? What did we? No way, we didn't end up number one, right? Who's won? Fair enough. All right, so the three types of map, let's just go through them one by one, and we'll talk about kind of what they look like. Okay? So this is a physical map, or this would be an example of a physical map. By the way, I promise you that you have seen all three types of these maps. We're just going to create a link, basically, between what you've seen and what you know, okay? So this is a physical map, or this is an example of a physical map. Physical maps show physical features, so things like mountains, oceans, rivers, lakes, etc., etc. They can also show things like elevations. So as you can see on this map of the United States, excuse me, I know it doesn't have a legend, but the things in green are generally in lower elevation than the things in yellow or this reddish color. And you can tell that, or you can see that because there's a bunch of mountains and stuff over here. Okay? And then, like I said, physical maps can also point out bodies of water. So we've got the Great Lakes up here. We've got some small areas of lakes and rivers and such that we can see through this one as well. But physical maps obviously show the physical characteristics of a place. Okay? Things that are non-man-made, things that are just part of the landscape. Okay? Haven't tried this one yet. Ooh, that's yummy. Yeah, I like that. All right, so a physical map is going to show the physical features of a place, regardless of the place that it is at. A political map looks a little bit different. Okay, a political map is a map that is most common, or like what you normally probably interact with. Okay, a political map shows things like country or state names and the boundaries of those countries or states. Okay. We call it a political map because, countries are not defined by its physical features. Countries are not defined by any imaginary lines that are in the earth, right? It's lines that we have created up through politics or through governments, through claiming, basically. So that's why we call it a political map. So it has countries, state names, boundaries. They have major cities on them most of the time. So like in this one of Europe, they have capital cities and major cities that are outlined, and we can tell through this legend. And then obviously borders of those countries, or major borders in between multiple countries. This type of map, or this kind of map, is the most common that you will see, that you have interacted with probably your whole life. That when you look up map of somewhere, this is the kind of stuff that pops up. Excuse me. Just because it is more common does not mean it is less valuable than the physical map either. It helps us understand better with words, basically, instead of just looking at things. But they each have their own strengths. All right, and last but not least, we have a roadmap. Now, a roadmap is kind of a combination of the two, political map and a physical map. Roadmaps are the most uncommon of the three. However, I'm sure that you've seen one at least one time in your life. A roadmap, and literally what I want you to think of, is one of those big maps that you get at like a gas station or like a truck stop, okay? A roadmap shows in depth basically about a small area. So you can get a roadmap of Iowa or a roadmap of Nevada, and it shows smaller features of that singular state or that singular country. Things like major cities, towns, even suburbs, townships, et cetera, et cetera. So like in this map right here, this is a roadmap of Des Moines. It's obviously has pointed out the areas or the boundaries of Des Moines. but it also points out the boundaries of Urbandale, West Des Moines, Pleasant Hill, these different suburbs. It also points out major highways, interstates, and major streets that run through these different towns. So obviously, so this is going to be 35, and it runs all the way up, or I should say 235 before it turns into 35, running up to Ankeny. And all these other major highways and roads. And sometimes it'll do notable places. This one in particular doesn't have any notable places. And when I say notable places, I mean like sometimes it'll point out the capital, especially in this instance with Des Moines. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, this is where the capital is in regards to where you're at. Because when we look at a road map or when we think of a road map, we're using it for road trips. We need to know where these notable places are so that we can kind of stop and look maybe. Okay? Every once in a while, road maps will have those notable places or those notable things as well. This one kind of has one, like it has the Des Moines Airport right here. I can't remember if there's another one in here. I think it has hospitals outlined, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right, any questions about any of the three maps that we have gone over so far or the differences between any of them, et cetera, et cetera? I figured not. I just wanted to make sure that we had our bearings before we moved forward, because although it seems like common knowledge, and as we're working through it, I can see the boredom glazing over your eyes, and I completely understand. It's not fun, okay? Promise we'll get to some fun stuff, but I can see it, okay? I understand, but I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with kind of these main things or these core things before we can move forward, okay? All right, so speaking of moving forward, let's actually talk about these 5 themes of geography, okay? Today, we are at least going to get through the first of these 5 themes. We'll exemplify what it looks like, give you some definitions of the 2 different types, excuse me. And then by Thursday, we'll run through the rest of them, okay? So the 5 themes of geography, what are they? What do we need to focus on when it comes to these 5 themes, okay? The 5 themes of geography are location, place, movement, human environment interaction, and region, okay? Excuse me. These 5 things, like I said, and I will continue to say, make up the core of this class and the core of world geography, okay? With these 5 things, location, place, movement, human environment interaction, and region, we can justify as well as study and research the different things that happen across the world. How location, either absolute or relative, which we'll get into today, can make or break a decision between 2 countries. How place and the cultures that take place in a place makes a place a place. Okay, I know that's a lot of places, but that's how come we're going to look at it. Okay, the movement of not only physical things between countries or between states, but also the intellectual movement of ideas, how that affects the world. Obviously, how we treat the environment and how the environment reacts back to us, and the regions of the world, excuse me, and how they interact with each other. All right, so today we are at least going to get through location. We might get to place, we'll see, okay? But we are at least going to get through location today, so let's talk about it. Location can be split up into 2 different categories, okay? Or there are 2 different types of location that we focus on when it comes to geography. The first one is absolute location, okay? Absolute location, it should be pretty straightforward, is kind of absolutely at a certain point, okay? We use things like latitude and longitude to measure absolute location because it is the exact point on our continental grid in which a place is. So for example, Dike New Hartford High School is at 42 degrees north, negative 92 degrees east. That is its latitude and longitude exact position in this world. But that's not the only way that we can justify absolute location, and that's not the only way that we can measure absolute location. We can also measure absolute location by addresses, because again, it's the exact place and the exact address of a certain place. So for example, Disney's Magic Kingdom is located at 1180 Seven Seas Drive, Lake Buena Vista, Florida, 32830. There is no other thing that resides at that address other than Disney's Magic Kingdom. Okay? It is the only thing that's there, the only thing that's in that position, therefore it's absolute. Okay? We do use absolute location in our everyday life. Let's say that you're going to a new place or you've got maybe a new friend and you're headed over to their house. You type that address into Google Maps to take you there. We've used absolute location. Very rarely do you use latitude and longitude on a daily basis. I can't really think of any reason that any of you would be using latitude and longitude other than maybe in world geography. But you guys use addresses all the time. We use absolute location relatively often, okay? However, you guys are way more apt in a daily life to use relative location when it comes to location, okay? Relative location goes off of using descriptor words or using landmarks, timestamps, mileage, et cetera, okay? So I got a couple examples there for you. The first one I'm going to give to you as a relative location is that Des Moines is 120 miles away. Is it exactly 120 miles away? No, it's give or take, a mile or two. But I'm using mileage as a timestamp or mileage as a relative location. That relatively Des Moines is 120 miles away from Dike. Okay? Or, for example, it takes 5 minutes to walk to Quick Star. Does it take exactly 5 minutes to walk to Quick Star? No, it depends on how hungry you are. Maybe I'm speed walking, okay? But relatively, it takes 5 minutes to walk from here to Quick Start. Okay? So I'm not using absolute location. I am not telling you what the address of Quick Start is. I'm not telling you what the latitude and longitude of Des Moines is, but I'm using other things to describe so that you can get a relative idea of where things are at. We use these descriptor words and we can use these landmarks, timestamps, etc., because it is most comfortable to us. Okay? We are generally not comfortable with latitude and longitude, but we are comfortable with describing where the high school is in regards to what's around it. Right? Or I can tell you where I live by describing what's around it. Okay? I'm not going to, but I could. So absolute location is pretty easy to figure out, even though we don't mess with it a whole lot. Latitude and longitude is very easily obtainable through internet search, et cetera, et cetera. Same with addresses, but with relative location, you can't really do anything but use your words, okay? Although you can kind of look up maybe what's around it and stuff like that, relative location is based in those descriptor words, okay? So you have to have some kind of base knowledge as to where we go from here, right? We do this by participating in something called mental mapping, okay? Mental mapping is a way in which we participate in relative location when describing and using those descriptor words. Mental mapping helps answer the question, how does your mind remember where to go and how to get there? I know you guys have ginormous 3,000 gigabyte brains, but sometimes you forget a lot of stuff. So how do we remember where to go and how to get there? It also answers the question, how can you see where you're going in your mind as you're going there? Have you guys ever had, you guys can drive now, right? Most of you, okay, cool. Have you guys ever had that moment where like you're driving and you zone out and then you come back and you're like 2 miles away from where you originally were and you're like, how did I get here? What happened? Did I just have a seizure? Okay. How did you know where to keep going? How did you know in your mind where to keep going? Okay. That's mental mapping. We just knew. Okay. Mental mapping is just one of many strategies that we use to answer these questions, but it's the most easily accessible that we have. That in our minds, when we're going somewhere that we've been before or that we're familiar with, we mental map our way there as we're driving, as we're walking, as we're getting there. I'll give you an example of how I do mental mapping. Okay. I drive back and forth to Des Moines a lot because I'm from Des Moines. Okay. when I'm driving on Highway 20, I know that I am halfway through Highway 20, when I'm a quarter of the way through Highway 20 when I hit Grundy Center. And I'm 3/4 of the way when I hit Iowa Falls. And then when I get onto 35 to go to Des Moines, I know that I'm halfway there by when I hit Ames. So I'm using my relative location and my mental mapping to know how close I am to getting to my particular destination in either direction, basically. I'm sure you guys have a variety of different examples on what you use and how you use mental mapping every day. But where we are going with this, or why I'm bringing up mental mapping, why we're spending so much time talking about relative location, is that I am going to test you in your mental mapping abilities today, okay? Excuse me. So what I'm going to have you do is I want you to go ahead and get a blank sheet of paper out, please, and thank you, okay? If you need to use multiple pieces of paper, you can. I don't think you are going to need to, but I want you to go ahead and get a blank sheet of paper out. All right, so we are going to test your mental mapping ability. And how well, or how often even, you use your mental mapping abilities to get from place to place, okay? So there are kind of two steps to this process, one of which is basically a task of getting from A to B, and another one we'll talk about in just a little bit, okay? But step one on this journey that we're going on together of mental mapping, okay, is the first step that I'd like you to do, and I'm going to give you plenty of time to do this, okay? What I would like you to do is on your sheet of paper, just to start off with, I want you to, in the bottom left-hand corner of your paper, draw a map of Dike, okay? Within this map of Dike, I want you to include main roads, businesses, maybe the school, maybe your house, maybe houses of people you know. How do you envision Dike when I say draw a map of Dike? Okay. Once you feel like you've got a good map of Dike, or that you have kind of put everything that you can remember of Dike into this map, I want you to extend north or extend up on your paper to New Hartford. Okay. Do the same thing with New Hartford. Show the roads in which you use to get there. And then in New Hartford, draw the main roads, draw houses, draw businesses, whatever you can think of. I know there's not a lot in New Hartford, but there's enough, okay? And then last but not least, you can extend east or to the right and draw Cedar Falls. What do you remember about Cedar Falls? How do you recognize Cedar Falls? What roads do you take to get there, okay? This is all a drawing concept. So you are taking the images that you are seeing in your brain and putting it down on paper, okay? I am going to give you guys, let's start with 10 minutes, but if we need more, we can do more, okay? I'm gonna give you guys some time to do that. You are more than welcome to talk to the people around you to try and remember kind of where things are at, or if you need some help with this, you're more than welcome to do that. But I'm gonna give you guys 10 minutes at least to start with to get drawing, okay? All right, y'all, all right, so we have participated. If you still need a little bit of time to put your finishing touches on your map, that's fine. No big deal. We still have 20 minutes left to basically finish this up, okay? What I'm gonna have you guys do now, I just taken a little tally here, okay? Was this really difficult to draw out everything? Kind of, a little bit. Was it were you man, I can see it in my brain, but I can't put it down on paper. It's hard to draw it out, right? Okay, well, I've got a different perspective for you then, or I've got a different way that you can do this then. What I'd like you to do now is, instead of drawing it out, kind of mental mapping in an actual mapping sense, right? What I'd like you to do now is, maybe it'll be a little bit easier to explain it in words, okay? So on the backside of your sheet, or wherever you have room, basically, if you use the backside, that's fine, wherever you have room, okay? I want you to explain in words how to get somewhere. So instead of mapping it out and drawing it out, maybe it'll be a little bit easier to explain in words how to do these specific things. So for each of these, right, explain how you get from your house to the high school in words, okay? Explain how you get from the high school to the on-ramp of Highway 20, okay? Explain how you get from Slice to New Hartford, and explain how you get from Walmart to UNI to Dike to Des Moines, okay? Explain in words how you do these things. Maybe it'll be easier, maybe it'll be harder, but you can use the back side of your sheet, use as much room as you need to. You are going to turn this in, so just make sure to get as many of those done as possible. This will be kind of the first little assignment that we'll have today, okay? So explain how to get from each of these places in words. Again, you are more than welcome to talk to people around you if you need a little bit of support, okay? Oh, sorry. Come on. There we go.